All right, what I want to talk about with you next is document hierarchy. Document hierarchy is one of the most important concepts that you need to understand before you can get into coding CSS. The document hierarchy is kind of like a family tree or some sort of organizational chart that is based on the nesting of a page's XHTML tags. A good way to learn or understand this concept is to take a little snippet of code and strip out any extra markup so that you can just see the tags. So I've done that here in this little bit of snippet here. And basically what I have is I have a body tag. Within that is a div with an ID of logo. And a div tag is just kind of like a generic tag that you can make so that you can address or talk to, it's like a container where you can contain certain bits of code, and then with CSS you can address or style that div independently. The ID is like a name for this specific div. And we'll be working with divs later on, so if you aren't familiar with them, just know it's a division tag, and that we'll be getting into that as we go on. But within my div tag, I have an image tag, I have an h2 tag, and then I close my div, and finally my body. So if we look over here in this graphical representation, you can see that the body tag contains, or it nests, all of the other tags. It's like a container and all the other tags are inside of it. The div tag, with the ID of logo in this case, contains the other two tags. It contains or nests the image and the h2 tag. Both the image and the h2 are basically children of the div tag because it is the containing element of both of those particular tags. The div tag, in turn, is the parent of both the image and the h2 tag. And then finally, the image and the h2 tags are siblings of one another because they have the same parent. And the body tag is essentially an ancestor tag of the image and the h2 tag, kind of like a grandparent. They are indirectly descended from the body tag and directly descended from the div tag. So, that's kind of like a family tree. If you can think of it that way, hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. So basically, if we go ahead and just look at a little bit of code here, we can go ahead and, like if I was going to write some CSS, hopefully this relationship will make a little bit more sense. Here I have an example of just a little CSS style that I started to write. I put div hash logo image, and then some CSS style would appear over here. So what this is basically saying is this CSS rule is going to target image tags that are contained or inside of div tags with the ID of logo. So any image tag that is within the div with an ID of logo is going to be affected by this particular rule. If we have image tags that are elsewhere on our page, they are going to be unaffected by this rule because they aren't within the logo div. So you can imagine if I had some image tag that appeared later on down here, it would not be affected by this CSS rule. This little hash mark right here is the ID symbol in CSS, so it's how we let the CSS know that we are talking to the div with an ID of logo. And we'll get into that a little bit more later on. So why this is so important in CSS is because you have the ability now to specifically control images in a different way. Like if we just wrote a CSS rule for images, they would affect all images. So if we made a CSS rule and we made all images have a 10 pixel purple back border, they would all have 10 pixel purple borders. But let's say in a specific area of our web page, we wanted an image to have a different treatment. We didn't want it to have that border. This is the way that you can do that. So the nesting of particular tags becomes extremely important in CSS because now you can isolate or control which tags are going to be affected by specific rules. Every element within the body of your document is a descendant of the body tag, and depending on its location in the markup, the element could be an ancestor, a parent, or a sibling to other tags in the document hierarchy. By creating rules that use references to IDs, classes, and the hierarchy structure, you have a means by which you can accurately dictate which CSS rules are going to affect which specific XHTML elements. So make sure that you understand document hierarchy, and if you need to kind of map it out in a family tree type of diagram, sometimes that can be really helpful.